The 3:30 p.m. meeting of the Bakersfield City Council is now in session.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to call to order the 3:30 regular City Council meeting of April 24th, 2024. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go,
Here.
Vice Mayor Gonzalez,
Here.
Councilmember Arias, Councilmember Weir, Councilmember Smith,
I am here.
Councilmember Freeman, here. Councilmember Gray, here, and Councilmember Core.
Thank you. In keeping with the Council's new resolution, public statements are now received at different times depending on the item. I will call on the City Clerk to call for public statements at the appropriate time, so listen carefully for the correct time to speak. If you wish to make a public statement, please fill out a public speaker card and place it in the tray on the counter next to the speaker podium. We ask that you mark whether you are here to speak on an item listed on today's agenda or on a matter not on the agenda. Speakers who do not identify a specific item will be presumed speakers for the non-agenda public statements. If you're here to speak on an item not listed on the meeting agenda, you will be called first to speak. Statements are given a 2-minute time limit, 20 minutes total for all non-agenda item public statements. If you're here to speak on an item listed on the agenda, I will call for you at the appropriate time, so please listen carefully. If public statements become disruptive and I have to clear the chambers to regain order of the meeting, you will be called in one at a time to provide your public statement when your item is called. Everyone in attendance is expected to adhere to the rules of decorum established by resolution of the City Council. Failure to abide by the city's rules of decorum, including any disruptive behavior that interferes with our ability to have an orderly and efficient meeting, prevents the City Council from conducting the business of the city. Consider this a first warning to everyone in attendance that conduct disrupts the city that disrupts this meeting may result in expulsion and or the chamber being cleared. Behavior that disrupts the meeting includes repetitive statements, shouting, interrupting staff or presenters during the meeting, speaking out of turn, outbursts from the audience, and surpassing the 2-minute time limit. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding items not listed on the agenda?
Mayor Go, we have not received any speaker cards for items not listed on tonight's agenda or for items listed on today's agenda.
Thank you. And for the record, Councilmember Core entered at 3:32. All right, so now, next item, please.
Reports item 3A, report on fiscal year 2024-25 general fund revenue.
Thank you. City Manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We have Mr. Randy McKeegan, our Finance Director, who'll give a brief presentation on revenues.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. McKeegan.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Mayor Go, council members, my pleasure to be able to present this. Just so you know, we are working through our budgetary process still, so we are adjusting our budget workshops and our processes. So I was offered up to do the first budget presentation for this upcoming fiscal year, so I'll be presenting the general fund revenue and our review of it. We've done this before, we do this every year, but it is important information, so I wanted to be able to present that to you. So the first item on this presentation, we do it every year, but this is the breakdown of our estimated revenue for the upcoming fiscal year, and it compares it to our actuals from 2023 and what we estimate to receive by the end of this fiscal year. So what you'll see here is that for 2024-25, we expect revenue for the general fund, which includes PSVS revenue, to amount to about $403 million. When you compare that to prior year estimates, or actually the current year estimates of 408, you'll see that actually is a decrease. But to add some perspective there, our budget for the general fund last year was $403 million, $403.8 million. So basically we're flat. The increase from that estimate and what we currently have is primarily from property taxes. We had $105 million budgeted for property taxes, We're estimating to receive 110.8. So that is where that difference really comes in from what we budgeted and what we expect to budget or receive for next year. So in essence, what we're seeing here is a flat budget. $403 million was budgeted last year, and we expect to receive 403 for this upcoming fiscal year. We're going to talk about the top three revenue sources in depth, but you'll also see that the next largest revenue source stream is charges for services, and that stream is primarily related to fees collected for services like parks and recreation, development services, public works. It also includes maintenance district fees, as well as internal fees collected between departments for work done within the general fund. So again, $403.3 million anticipated for the next fiscal year in the general fund. This next slide presents that graphically with a pie chart. So you'll see that we have our top three revenue streams. Again, our property tax, our standard Bradley Burns tax, and our PSVS measure tax. The level of increase the level of coverage from property taxes has actually increased to about a third of our general fund. Last year it was about 26%. Again, because sales, and we'll talk about that, sales tax revenues are pretty much flat this year, and we'll talk about the increase that resulted in property tax. So that shows that property taxes has grown a little bit more as a piece of the pie, as it shows there. So we're going to go through the individual larger revenue streams. So we're going to start with the property tax revenue. So what you'll see here is we anticipate $115 million in property tax revenue, which is a 4% increase from the prior year. Just so to get you the lay of the land here, that the bars represent the actual revenue received, and you'll see a steady increase. Because of Prop 13, there is, in essence, a steady increase in property assessed values. That purple line is the increase or decrease in revenue from year to year. So again, we had some pretty significant increases post Great Recession, and it's pretty much stayed in a pretty good level since then. But you'll notice that we've had some pretty large increases post COVID, but we've leveled that off, and we continue to be conservative in our estimates. So we're moving forward with a 4% increase from the prior year estimates. And as I mentioned previously, that revised estimate number is actually an increase of $5 million from what we anticipated to receive when we established the original budget for '24. The next slide relates to our sales tax, our Bradley Burns, which is the standard 1% sales tax that we collect. And you'll see here that because sales tax is really prone to the rise and fall of the economy, that there have been increases and decreases all based on the performance of the economy. So again, lay of the land, the bars represent the actual increase or the actual revenue, and the green lines represent the increase or decrease of that revenue from year to year. So you'll see here that we actually are anticipating about a 0.2% decrease from prior year in our sales tax for Bradley Burns. So we'll have and this is all based on analysis from we have a tax revenue consulting company called HDL, and they analyze the performance of all the industries, and we'll talk about that as well. And what they're showing is that there's going to be a leveling off, a continuing level off since COVID. So we are going to have basically $96.8 million in this revenue stream compared to 97.3 or 97.4 that we anticipate to receive this current fiscal year. Now, feel free to interrupt if you have any questions on what I'm presenting.
We're not able to do that right now because of our new procedure. We have to have the public comment before we go to council.
Oh, then don't interrupt.
Yes, please go ahead. Yes,
continue.
thank you.
Okay, so the next slide is our PSVS revenue, and you see that there's obviously a less history involved with that revenue stream, but again, the bars represent the actual revenue, the green line represents the increases or decreases from year to year. So what we'll see here is a 1% increase is estimated based on our HDL consultant analysis of the industries within the local area. So we'll expect to have $101.2 million, or basically $101.3 million in this revenue stream from compared to 100.2 from the prior year. So basically $1 million increase between 2023-24 and the upcoming fiscal year 24-25. So to add a little more meat to the analysis, I wanted to present the revenue collections by industry. I have to be careful on how in depth we provide this information. We can't identify specific tax holders, or taxpayers, I should say. So what we have here are the various industries that are laid out by the state for the collections. You'll see that the largest industries that we collect revenue streams from are the auto and transportation and the general consumer goods. You'll see that there is a gradual decrease from the highs during the basically post-COVID of 21-22 to where we are now, and we continue to see those decreases based on consumer spending being reduced as available dollars that individuals have has reduced, and those have actually decreased. So that has resulted in part of this lack of growth in this revenue stream. I'm sorry, this is related to Bradley Burns, this specific one. It doesn't include PSVS. I'll show that one later. One of the strange, I find it strange, but one of the things that continues to increase is the restaurants and hotels. People continue to go out to eat and enjoy those nights out at the restaurants, and that continues to grow despite what you would think as less available disposable income. One of the things that is a big reduction from year to year is that county pool. That county pool number is really online sales and used car sales, and actually personal car sales in between individual, so it's not through lots. So that activity has basically been reduced because our share of the pool has decreased because of increases in affected sales. So, and I can't get into the specifics of the type of company it is, but it's a large online retailer, and the county has a large online retailer, and so it reduces our share of the pool. In addition to that, there have been errors in collections that have to be right-sized. So in essence, individuals have basically paid our taxes that were really belonging to other entities within the county. So that has reduced in part because we have to pay it back. So we've received some significant adjustments to our revenue that we have to pay back from prior years. So again, all of this results in a basically flat, well actually 0.63% decrease in the Bradley Burns. A little bit of different story somewhat. Again, we talked about this is the PSVS by industry. And again, same industries, there is no county pool for the PSVS, that all the funds are directly to us based on actual sales, whether it be vehicles, whether it be online sales. So that all comes directly to us. So you'll see here again, the reductions in auto and transportation, the reductions in general consumer goods, slight increases year over year in restaurants and hotels. Same basic pattern there. Again, the issue is we don't have that amount that we had to, in essence, pay back from overpayments from previous years. So we're not seeing that affect this revenue stream. And so I wanted to really touch on this, go back to PSVS. As you are aware, last year we allocated portions of PSVS to the general fund operations, about $8.9 million. So in addition to that, I wanted to rope in the fact that the transient occupancy tax, which is a tax based on hotel stays within our city limits, also contributed to the general fund operations of $1 million. So it is a revenue stream that affects the general fund, but to a much less extent, but it is continuing to grow. You'll see here, again, same idea. The bars represent the actual revenue received, and the line represents the increases. We continue to see some pretty good performance in this particular revenue stream. Last year, we had $10.5 million estimated in revenue in this stream, and it is estimated to be about 12.4. So we're seeing and again, we do budget conservatively. And again, in 22-23, we budgeted $10 million and received $11.6 million. So it continues to outperform our budgets. So we are budgeting $12 million when, again, we budgeted 10.5 last year. And for some perspective, a large portion of this revenue stream is transferred for CIP activity. So last year it was about $9 million is basically funding CIP. So as this grows, we have to understand, are we going to continue to deal with growth in the general fund or CIP? But in addition to the $9 million, as you can see, it's 11 and 12.4. In addition, this source of fund covers the arena operations and the Visit Bakersfield operations. So with that, I am now available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. McKeegan. First, we'll go to the public. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers regarding this item?
Mayor Go, I've not received any speaker cards regarding this item.
Thank you. And so now, council questions or comments? And there's nothing showing up on my screen yet, Madam Clerk. Okay, Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just on the county pool, I thought those monies came to wherever the purchaser lived, the zip code. But it has to do also, you stated, from where.
Sure. I'll try
The
to
retailer is.
explain it as best I can. So certain online, so for PSVS, the revenue from PSVS, that for online sales, that collection goes directly to the city. So based on the zip code, the location, if they're in the city limits, it will come to us. But if it's the Bradley Burns, they don't have that direct connection. It's based on the location of the actual seller. And then they remit a lump sum to the state, and then it's distributed to the county based on a proportion of the total sales for all the cities or locations within the county. So it's not a direct link like PSVS. So, and again, it's not only online sales, it's also related to when individuals have private sales vehicles, that sales tax goes into the pool. You could, in theory, you could have 90% of the sales occur within the city limits between private parties, but they just put it in the pool and it's distributed based on proportional share of sales tax collected in the various entities within the city. I mean, the county, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. Randy, I just had a few questions. And maybe you explained it, but I didn't totally understand. There's 3 areas where we have pretty significant swings. The others are almost the same every year, but other taxes, 2 million down this year and then back up again. Is there one item in there that swung those so dramatically? Or what happened there?
Yeah, I'd have to look a little bit closer to that. I do believe that there were some taxes related to franchise fees that were collected, that this is an estimate. So we haven't even received the franchise fees from the various utility companies and those phone companies and the like. So I didn't increase that. I actually kept it flat. So I don't even have that money yet, but they owe us the funds. And so I did increase it based on the prior year.
Well, you went back up,
actual.
but is this sort of a conservative?
Yeah.
We don't have the money yet.
Yeah.
It might come in at 12 million anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
it very well could, but I
Okay.
wanted to leave it at what we had estimated in the budget, so we didn't overinflate what we had available in the upcoming fiscal year.
Next question. Intergovernmental, pretty flat for 23 and 24, and then it plummets to about a third.
Sure.
Is that like transfers that back and forth between your departments, or what is that?
Now, the intergovernmental is really grant money from state and
Grants.
federal sources. So This is actual. So in a lot of cases, the grants come in over time. We may not have it budgeted, and then once they get the award, they will add it to the budget. So this 9.6 is actual revenue that I think we had some significant grants that came through. But again, we don't know what's going to come in, so
Yeah.
we don't want to rely on that level until we know what the source is.
That's smart. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a guess. And then down at miscellaneous transfers in, almost 14 million in '23, down to about 7 in '24.
Sure.
And we guess it's back up, or down again to 4. What's going on there?
Sure, that one's pretty straightforward. In 22-23, if you recall, the ARPA dollars set aside $10 million that could be transferred to the general fund as basically revenue recovery. So that 13.8 is 10 million of that is ARPA dollars that came in that we basically added to the general fund as available dollars for future use.
I guess then maybe one final remark is we should all, if we're flat, and I know that partly because we're not forecasting as many grants and things, but even if we did, and we just looked at a pretty flat 3 years, if we have to remember that round numbers, we're really down 20%. That's what our inflation has been, about 20%. That means our revenues will buy 20%, a fifth less of everything. A fifth less police cars, a fifth less garbage trucks, a fifth less investment in software. That's what inflation has done to us. And, hey, your retirement portfolio may be flat, well, really, you're down 20%. And everybody needs to remember that we're now losing ground. In an inflationary environment, if your revenues aren't growing together, at least to match inflation, you're not keeping up. And you'll be able to invest fewer things, necessities that we need, software, trucks, I mean, all this stuff, people. This is, it's just something that we should be aware of, that we actually have less money coming in real dollars to run our city.
Yes, Councilmember Freeman, I think one of the issues is that this is part one of the budget presentation, so we still are compiling our general fund expenditure numbers. So that is one of the major issues we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
There are inflationary costs operationally, but also related to salaries and benefits, pension costs that are also going to affect what's available in other areas when we move into that and we kind of finalize those numbers.
Yeah, theoretically, if our expenses have gone up 5%, which they very easily could have with our union contracts and the cost of new equipment, it never seems to go up equal to what they tell us the latest 3.5% inflation. New equipment is now up. It's 10% more for the garbage truck than it was. When we get further along in the budget process, I'd certainly like to hear, and probably the council, where have you struggled? When you put the budget together and you looked at, well, these are what we thought our needs were, but we don't have enough money to pay. We're going to be driving old cop cars, or we, can't do these things that we wanted to do. It'd be interesting for you guys to give us some comments on where you had to work the hardest to balance the budget.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I think, again, we are at $403.3 million in our general fund. That's what we estimate to receive. So I anticipate there will be discussion from management to council on decisions that are going to have to be made related to one-time costs, related to CIP, to really keep us within that $403.3 million.
The reason is we may have some debates here at council on, hey, you're having to cut. And I might say, don't cut those 6 parks we haven't funded yet. Those people paid their fees. Well, but Bruce, then we can't do the roads we need. There's going to be some real trade-offs that are going to be painful. And I think you need to share those with us so as a council we understand and we get to give input on, gee, I don't know what it'll be, but we may have to cut more here to make up here, because we all want to have enough money for everything we need, but there isn't going to be enough money, and we're going to all have to make some compromises and struggle a little bit, and maybe get creative and solve a few problems just by being a little more creative. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, Randy, thank you so much to you and your team for the presentation and for all the work leading up to this budget season, especially given the fact that much of your time, all of your time, and overtime has been spent in the adoption of our ERP system for the city. It's like building a completely new city hall and working within that construction site at the same time. And so you and your team, you're 33 staff members all deserve much appreciation from this dais.
Thank you.
And so just please convey that to them.
I will.
all.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Wanted to ask you a couple questions. First and foremost, thank you so much for the sales tax revenue report by industry. I always enjoy this particular piece because it really does indicate how some of our sectors are performing. I wonder about the auto and transportation, if it has to do with the economy, or if part of it is the fact that insurance rates are escalating, interest rates are at all-time high, and people are more reluctant to purchase a new car or can't get new automobile insurance. But I am encouraged by the upward trajectory of restaurant and hotel sales. That's definitely a positive for us. Wanted to ask you a couple questions regarding transit occupancy tax.
Sure.
We have an increase of TOT of around 30% over the last 8 years. That's huge. I think partly that's because of new hotels, new hotel beds, and also I think the price per hotel room, those rates have increased over time,
Yes.
particularly after the pandemic. Is that
Yes.
right? So I wonder why we're estimating a 3.3% decrease in this next fiscal year when we saw an increase of 6.8% the prior year, given the fact that there's still a pretty strong demand for hotel beds. And from my cursory knowledge of the industry, and I have a number of hotels in my ward, demand is still pretty strong.
Yeah. The room rates have gone up, and the occupancy it's still pretty high. There are not a lot of vacant rooms, so I will just own up to this. This is my conservative brain, just saying it's never been $12 million in the budget before. So
Okay.
let me just. But so it really is just the conservative approach of I don't want to overstate it because we're relying on CIP to fund this. So if I put it at 13 million, we're going to have to roll back something. So it's just like.
No.
Yeah.
My mom was a small business owner, and growing up, she would always say, "You underpromise and overdeliver." And so
was
that
in the back
is
of
your
my head. I didn't
approach.
want to say that.
No, I appreciate that. So I'd rather be surprised later down the road than surprised later down the road. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for this presentation. I too enjoyed seeing how we break it up by industry, and I'm very proud to have the Auto Mall in Ward 7. We are very lucky to have this tax base, this revenue base in our city, and despite their small dip, I'm glad to see that they've still been some of our highest performers as kind of an industry. And I just want to acknowledge that I think we can do more for our auto mall in terms of just the vandalism and theft that they've been seeing as a city, and just acknowledge that and all of the revenue that is coming from, all the sales that they're doing. So a quick shout out to our auto mall for still being a robust part of the budget and the monies that keep the city running and keeping our lights on.
Thank you, Councilmember Kaur. And to the finance team and to all in leadership, thank you so much for your prudent approach. I was just in a setting with other mayors, many of whom were bemoaning their very, very large deficits. And so thank you very much. And I don't see other requests to speak at this point. Vice Mayor?
Move to adjourn to closed session.
Receive and file.
Oh, a motion to receive and file.
We
Pardon
don't
me.
have closed session, so
I'm sorry.
receive and file.
Yeah, motion to receive and file.
You have a motion, please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with council members Arias, Weir, and Freeman absent.
Thank you. And with that, we stand adjourned at 4 o'clock, and we will.
Mayor Go, I would like to make an announcement
Oh.
that we received a staff memorandum pulling item 4A, closed session, conference with legal counsel, potential litigation from the agenda.
And that's why we are now adjourned at still 4 o'clock. And then we will reconvene at 5:15.